You're listening to Reignite, a podcast about turning the tide. I'm MJ.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And joining us for this episode is close friend of the pod, Mike Kimble.
Hello. Greetings to all my fellow shepherds.
Hi, Mike. For anyone who doesn't know, Mike Kimble is one of our friends from the Discord. He's often interacting with us and fostering some great conversation. He gives Ian a run for his money as our captain of morale.
That's true.
Oh, okay. I wasn't even aware of that. I'm morale guy.
Yep. One day Ian and Mike are gonna fight it out in the parking lot, but then they'll just end up like realizing that they're both really cool people and then hugging it out. So
right, that's how it always goes. Mike, we're really excited to have you on the show. You've been really supportive of the pod, and we have worked through other regular commenters and interactors to become guests. It's been very fun to be able to do that because without y'all, we don't have this show. It would be us screaming into the void and nobody caring. So with that said, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself? You know, just kind of let them know what the Mike Kimble experience is like.
Oh, God, you don't want to go there, man. But okay. So, first of all, thank you guys for letting me on. This is really weird. So, just for the listeners, this is my, official worldwide podcasting debut. I've never done this. So, if things get, weird, raw, unfiltered, occasionally unprofessional, really profane, that's fine. That's normal. So, we're just going to kind of spitball it.
I'm sorry. I'm very curious about this impression you have that anything Matt and I do is professional in the least.
That's true.
Well, okay. I mean, you guys have, done this before. You've practiced, There's a flow. There's a sense of normalcy, and I'm just going to come in here and just wreck shit. So, anyway, as far as my CV goes, I recently graduated from Portland State University. I have a degree in Masters of Urban Regional Planning. Had a job in that field doing digital mapping work. That kind of went with COVID, but I'm kind of thinking that was the wrong profession for an overactive imagination, so I'm kind of trying to use the opportunity to pivot. I'm currently working, just doing a keep the bills paid and the lights on kind of job, doing online orders for a grocery store in my area, which has become super entertaining in, COVID land. That's the stories. My goodness. But that's a thing for another time. So that's, and as far as the, on the personal side, I'm doing a little bit of nonprofit work, but the family kind of just sort of navigated our way out of housing insecurity, let's say, and now we're kind of finally getting settled and actually living for once, which is great. So this is sort of my opportunity to really kind of step back up and be a person again. So it's cool.
That's great.
Well, it sounds like things are going as good as they can in COVID land, and I'm happy to hear that, of course, Mike. The next thing we'd want to ask is what we ask every guest, which is, what's your Mass Effect experience? How did you first discover the Mass Effect games? Did you start with the first one? Did you start with the third one? And when did you get into them? How long have you been playing them?
So I've pretty much been playing them since they came out. It was the first one. I know you guys have had a lot of previous guests who kind of expressed similar sentiments, that this idea initially, the first game came out, it was pitching your decisions will carry over from this game to the next game, and that was a new thing that was supposed to be revolutionary, and that was really appealing. I'd never really played BioWare stuff prior to Mass Effect and Dragon Age, and those two games have just taken over the entire household. My sister's playing, my mom's playing. We have made custom merch stuff for a while before we even knew you guys were doing merch stuff. So there's Garrus pillows and Thane phone cases and all kinds of stuff just sort of littering our house. But the first game, was the hook. The second game was where things really kind of took off, and I'm one of those people that will I enjoy the game, but I'm also willing to be a little bit more critical about some of the places where they misstep. And today we're going to get into some of that. But, I like to think that being a proper fan is being willing to admit even when your heroes goof. So it's been nice. It's been I've been. It's one of the weird kind of fandoms where I've actually been here from the beginning. You know, usually you kind of jump in halfway, or like you start with the Star Wars prequels and all. But this has been one of the rare ones where it's like I dived in, was in it from the jump, and just kind of followed it the whole way through. So being able to talk about it's really kind of cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that the common story on this podcast is people discovering it from the beginning and then kind of falling face first into it, kind of free falling. But it's nice to see that there are dynamics to it. Some folks do that, and other folks like we had Jesse on earlier this season. Jesse Patelli discovered these games this year and played them all this year. And I think both sides of it are really exciting and shows to the versatility of the game.
I've long wondered whether certain the games that tend to get a lot of blowback, whether the people that start with those and then move to the first couple for later, I think they might appreciate them a bit more. There's not quite that sense of I've been let down by those I held dear.
For sure. So let's move on to some of my favorite stuff. MJ, why don't you lead us in the choices?
Yeah, so Mike, why don't you tell us what your ideal choices are as we lead up to Mass Effect 3? Starting with, do you lean more Paragon, or are you kind of a renegade?
I am yet another of the Paragon Legion. Kinda.
Kind of.
Yeah,
okay.
So I usually try and do as best I can. The problem is I am a pathological metagamer. I know exactly what the thresholds are. I know where you need to be to make sure that you don't screw up, kill off certain characters, get on the wrong side of those conflict moments in game 2. And so a lot of this is I try and toe the line as best I can do with the Paragon stuff, but when I have an opportunity for a Renegade trigger that won't affect anything, oh boy. So it's like the Renegade triggers that I pull the most are the ones where I'm killing off some random talkative thug who just will not shut up. The Krogan in Mass Effect 2, there's that Batarian guy who's kind of a dick to you at the beginning when you're getting Garrus. But I never do anything really crazy with Renegade stuff. I've never punched the reporter lady because that's cheap, and as much as it might feel
she's just doing her job.
Well, I respect the reason she's there.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Maybe not her personally. But, so, and just in game, just in the narrative, it just reflects badly on everyone. So,
what about the Rachni Queen? Does she walk away from your interaction?
Oh yeah, I never kill her. That's a bridge too far.
Someone who doesn't commit genocide.
Yeah.
Well, hey, give it a minute. We're getting to
that. We're getting to the genocide. How about your Virmire survivor?
I have brought Ashley through Virmire most of the time. Inspired by your stellar example, I kept Caden alive in my most recent playthrough to see if that felt different. You've converted one of us.
Amazing. My job is done here.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like there's way more Caden stands than Ashley stands. And everyone we've talked to so far has been all about Caden.
Okay, Ashley, for me, the whole racism thing, I get it. I understand why people don't like her because of that. And I believe it was Kenneth last time that was mentioning that, the whole...
Yeah.
She gets over the racism thing, and that becomes an arc. It is really kind of headcanon-y because they never really address it directly and explicitly in the text. But it is interesting watching someone be all suspicious of Rex and Garrus in the first game and then just sort of palling around with them later like there's no big deal. Although I did notice,
Yeah.
you notice that she never actually talks bad about Tally.
Oh no, she never does.
Exactly.
No, not once.
Liara, definitely. But Tally, no.
Right, exactly. And it makes sense. In narrative, it makes sense. Even though the person, she's accusing Garrus, his people helped build the Normandy of being, poking around the engines. Tally actually is poking around the engines, but she never says anything. But why? It makes sense. She reminds her of her little sisters. It actually makes sense,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which,
Totally.
Though, if you romance Ashley, then romance Tally, then there is some tension.
well, yeah. If you want to go full player, you could do that. That's, ugh. I couldn't even do that in real life. Okay.
What about the council?
I left him alive. That's classic meta stuff, though. Just because you literally kill, even if you kill the council, they just clone them for the next game. It's ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
The one big thing I have a problem with BioWare big decision making is that, especially with the Mass Effect games, it feels like the two options are that things go wrong because of what you did or despite what you did.
Yeah.
And it's like,
That's fair.
Yep.
sure, you saved us, but that doesn't actually change anything,
Yeah.
So, I left them alive on principle, and because having played the game enough times, it's like, oh, well, doesn't matter if you do kill them. So, it's like, might as well stick with the one that brung you.
Alright, and what happens to Rex?
With the glorious exception of my first playthrough, he is alive. Before I figured out what the thresholds were to get the Paragon thing to show up, I ended up Ashley killed him the first time. Thanks, Ash. And I ended up having to do my initial playthrough of 3 with Reeve, and that kind of sucked. But
Yeah, I can imagine.
That sounds terrible.
It complicates the whole Krogan dynamic and actually makes it a bit more tense. Because all of a sudden now there's a bit more gravity to the Solarians' offer of, oh, well, Reeve's not the greatest guy. He might actually go full, vengeance quest on us. So it sends some legitimacy to their concerns.
Yeah. What about the Geth? Do you kill them or do you rewrite them?
Do you mean, do I indoctrinate them?
That is a way to put it.
Is it indoctrinating or is it mediating a family squabble?
Okay, well, I mean,
Well,
I have a lot of complicated thoughts on this one. I mean,
It's a complicated issue.
this is probably, I would say, like the most effective. I wouldn't say it's the best, but it's the most effective decision point they've done, just because of how long we're still talking about it. The one big theme that keeps kind of running through these games, at least for me, is this idea of changing minds. This idea of, from the beginning, you're not going to Eden Prime to save anyone. You don't know that there's anyone to save at the time. You just know that you're there to convince the council that humans should be in the Spectres. And from then on, you're on this campaign of trying to change people's minds. And what makes Shepard the hero of this whole trilogy is that you do this through convincing people. You persuade them or intimidate them, but the choice is theirs to make. And what makes the Reapers the bad guys is they don't give you a choice in the matter. Just by being in proximity to them, you come over to their way of thinking. They've invaded your brain. And that's sort of what codes them as villains. I mean, the killing people thing, villains in these genres always kill people. That's like the baseline. But the invading of someone's most personal thoughts and feelings and just changing them forcibly, invading their brain, that's sort of what codes them as villainous for me. And so it feels like this decision, you sort of have to do some Reaper cosplay. And it's creepy and weird, and it doesn't feel like me like there are any good decisions to make. Like, coding one of them as Paragon and one as Renegade just feels dirty.
Agree.
Yeah.
But I'm trying not to get too personal with this, but anyone, I think, who has watched a person in real life change from one mindset to another, watching, to put it bluntly, watching the world or to break a person kind of makes you feel a bit more squeamish about doing that to a character in a video game or in fiction. Inflicting that as deliberate harm or change. This idea of, like, if you ever watch the movie Annihilation, this idea of, the mourning the person you used to be. There's so many cascading things that would result from changing the Geth in such a fundamental way that I can't think that they'd be the same entities they were afterwards, and that's going to leave a scar. And at least, even as much as killing them is very final, as some of your guests have put it in the past, they are at least the same people they were. If this was the Elusive Man pressing this button, you'd feel a lot less secure about that decision, about calling it a Paragon decision. And the fact that it's Shepard pressing the button somehow kind of codes that as less villainous. The idea that this is the merciful move, that this is, oh, well, they're still alive, they're still them, quote unquote, but I don't really know if they are. And if one of us showed up tomorrow with the complete inversion of our political or personal or ethos, still alive, but our meat suit is now spouting the exact opposite of everything we know and believe to be true, there's an open question about whether that's better or worse than just being gone. So it's icky to advocate for killing all of them, to, when your choices are indoctrination and that's not like it's there are no good options, but I just chose the one that I felt less morally murky about, because you've just stampeded through this entire base, blasting Geth away with the shotgun for the past 20 minutes, and now you're saying, oh yeah, killing Geth bad.
Right. No, yeah.
That's fair.
So
yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's fine on the micro level, but then when the macro level, then suddenly it's wrong. But for me, it's just I can't rationalize. Even I don't like reducing it to the word brainwashing, because that feels too simple. But I never really got comfortable doing that decision, especially when it was coded as Paragon. That just felt ugh. So
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
I maintain that Shepard should not be in a position to make that decision.
Right. The Paragon decision is to just leave. To just say, I'd rather they
let it work itself out.
I'd rather they be alive and themselves when I exit this building. Geth Prime notwithstanding. So there's that.
What about the collector base?
Fuck the Elusive Man. Seriously.
Yes, welcome.
Yeah.
One of us.
Yeah.
The mantra of this episode.
Yeah.
This show in general.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sure, we're going to leave you this whole thing of, really complicated alien technology. Sure, have fun, go with it. No, I blew it up.
What's the worst that could happen? Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, and I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And the last two things are your romances for Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2. How did that play out?
Okay, so my most common romance is with Liara, but personally I prefer just doing a romance with Jack in Mass Effect 2. I mean, Liara is the obvious, the non-default option, but the one that seems like the game is kind of setting you up with a lot. Like, you can't not flirt with her half the time. It's really frustrating. But Jack, for me, kind of has this really satisfying personal character arc that I can't not. Mm-hmm. It's rewarding to see her kind of settle, change, become a better person, work through some backlog of trauma. Also, I've never even tried to romance Tali before, which is a weird surprise to me. I always kind of felt like she was like a little sister character in a way.
That
and
makes
so
sense.
it always
can see that.
She has really strong Kaylee from Firefly vibes.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and you start seeing echoes of that with like Parvati and Outer Worlds, same deal. Yeah, I usually play as FemShep and romance Liara in the first game, but the only problem is that I get locked out of playing of romancing Jack if you play as FemShep, which is really frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wrong.
And wrong, because she is not straight.
Right.
She's not straight.
Yeah,
you
like-
cannot
Uh,
present that character to me and say this is a straight woman.
Right? You know?
No.
It's like, and you know, she even her backstory suggests that she's had dalliances with multiple, with various genders.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were going to make adapt this, you'd almost wonder whether Jack would be recoded as non-binary, or something, because
Yeah.
it feels like they didn't really want to, they wanted to go in that direction but couldn't commit to it, so just kind of left it murky, but.
Yeah.
It feels the same with they did with the whole Jacob Thane rivalry thing they had going, and they just dropped it after the first scene.
Yeah.
There used to be more, and then they just said, "No, this doesn't make any sense. Let's not do that."
No. Let's not do it.
What I appreciate, Mike, is that you, like a lot of our listeners and like a lot of our guests, have given thought to some things that we haven't given thought to, but also even beyond that, things that we have in a different way. I never get tired of people. It's funny, of the 9 questions that we ask for people who are guesting for the first time in season 2, 6 is usually the one, for those who can't see our notes, 6 is kill or rewrite the Geth, has the longest commentary too. The rest, it's like, I did this, I picked that, maybe there's an anecdote, and I appreciate that. It speaks to what you were saying before, Mike. It is the best crafted decision in the game. Maybe not the best moment in the game, but one of the better crafted decisions that seems to have real consequence for us personally as the player.
Right.
I think everybody just wants to defend their crimes.
I mean that's partially true as well.
I wouldn't even go so far as to say that. I mean, with that decision, because they made it morally murky, that's what the reason it works. Because having these really obvious good, bad, it's the reason it's they were pointing at that infographic where this really alarming percentage of people played Paragon the whole way through, because the renegade options in so many cases are so renegade, so cartoonishly villainous. It's you're not playing. I mean, even Jack Bauer in 24 didn't punch reporters in the face on live television, and that's the thing, is that this decision added so much ambiguity. So the one thing that we didn't I noticed you removed was whether Anderson or Odina went on the council.
Oh.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't include that. I copied and pasted this from a different outline. So that's on me.
It's all good.
For the record, I've been putting Udina on there lately for metagaming based reasons, but just because he ends up there anyway. Although that when we get to this part coming up, because you guys are just Citadel 2 Aftermath, there's one really huge looming question that I've been wondering for years now about Udina and that whole thing. So we need to get to that in a second.
Before we get to that, why don't I give a summary?
Yes, please.
All right. So Traynor picked up on some Cerberus scientists who defected from the elusive man. When Shepard arrives to investigate, they find Cerberus trying to reclaim their lost assets. Shepard is also in time to help Jacob, who is nearly fatally shot. Jacob catches Shepard up on his connection to these scientists, and Shepard must save these people and their families.
Shocker, Shepard arrives to save everybody.
Yay!
Before we jump into our check-ins and our Citadel nonsense pre-check-ins, Mike, why did you choose this mission?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Well, first of all, how could I pass up the opportunity to discuss everyone's favorite character? Right? We all love Jacob here, don't we? He's he's so exciting, thrilling.
It's fine.
Okay, but seriously,
I love the idea of Jacob.
Jacob in theory is interesting, and we can get to this later.
Yeah.
Yes.
But so when you guys, spoiler alert for the listeners at home, I arranged this as a result of them putting up a little Twitter Discord thing. Hey, we have a couple of slots left open. There aren't any guests for these episodes. Would anyone be interested? And I was like, ooh, that sounds interesting. Yeah, consider my interest piqued. Because I'd never really done this. I didn't think this was like open. I thought this was like, okay, hey, fellow guests, friends of the pod, whatever. But listeners. Ooh. So there were only like 3 or 4 options left by the time I got there. And one was sort of, like Tally's introduction. Okay. But then there was this giant gaping void where Jacob was. And I was like, that can't be a coincidence. We remember what happened last time. But I remembered last episode with Jacob from last season, and that was rough. That mission, just the emotional toll it seemed to take on you guys just discussing that. And after the work you guys have put in to sort of redeem Caden Delenko as a character, I was like, I know Jacob gets a lot of flack too, and a lot of that is deserved. But this mission for me was like, it was the ultimate challenge. Try and find something interesting and likable about Jacob as a character, but also address the huge, violent disparity between what he could have been and what ended up becoming. And it's awkward, because we're going to be talking about some racism stuff.
Yeah. I strongly feel that BioWare did Jacob dirty.
Oh yeah, straight up. Absolutely. In a number of different ways, which, but it's awkward as a white guy to just, like, not just white, but, like, translucent, like, when people talk about their vacations, I get a sunburn white. Discussing BioWare doing a racism. You'd expect you'd want there to be some input from the affected population. We do also have responsibility as fans to say, hey, y'all done fucked up. And here are the ways you fucked up. Yeah. And here are the things we're going to do about that as a result. I'm not going to pretend that my sense of humor is in any way going to alleviate the difficult emotions that come with talking about the profound ways that Jacob was screwed over as a character from top to bottom, beginning to end, introduction to exit. But it was a more productive discussion than we were going to have with any of the other episodes that were available. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, before we get to Jacob, we have some housekeeping to do. We have to follow up on Citadel nonsense. We have to check in with everybody on the Normandy, and then we can go to Arrae.
Yeah. So why don't you lead us off on some of our Citadel nonsense?
Yes, I'm looking for things that are worth talking about.
So I can, if there's no specific order of how you want to address the Citadel stuff, there is something that I know unique to me that I can start with that happens on Purgatory.
Would that be Jack in the Purgatory?
It would be Jack in the Purgatory.
Yep, okay. You can start.
So I went to Purgatory to check in, and I'm sure... Actually, we'll start with this. So the first person I saw at Purgatory was Joker, and it's one of the follow-up conversations you get to have with Joker about, first of all, talking about observing people dancing, which I thought was actually a really funny conversation. Joker kind of acknowledging this, the war finally reaching and people dancing like they are going to die, essentially, because that's what's in the future, and like flailing in a way. And it leads into a conversation about Edie and how Joker feels about Edie and if he should continue to go after Edie as a romantic interest, because he is clearly into her. It's not a secret to anyone on the ship, the way he acts. And you can either kind of coach Joker through like, yeah, you should take advantage of this opportunity. You are clearly smitten, or you can talk him out of it. You can tell him that's a bad idea. I, of course, though they do code those choices as Paragon and Renegade, and I don't like that. I don't like that the Paragon answer is to go for the girl and the Renegade answer is to talk him out of it. And I think it's just positioning that feels that way, but still it does, based on the way the conversation wheel is designed, it is coded that way, even if one isn't the right answer. But, of course, I did support my dude because I want him to fall in love with a robot, and so I supported him.
I was very tempted to take the tree that said, "What about you and me?" Just for the lulls.
Just for the
Oh my god.
Do it for the Vine. I did not do it for the Vine or for the TikTok or for the Gram. I also encouraged him because you know what? Life is short, man. You obviously love her. We're all gonna die tomorrow. Just fucking tell her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why
Yeah, I
wait?
mean, it's
Don't
it
ask,
was
don't get, as my husband always says.
fair. Yeah, and I do appreciate that we kind of acknowledge, the way the Joker is watching from afar, and he kind of has a slightly better view of human behavior from this mildly outside viewpoint. Because he's not going to be out on the dance floor until the end of the scene. Really kind of interacting. He's always kind of, sitting at the bar watching, and then kind of has that perspective difference, which was nice. It kind of gave his character a bit more shading, because he's not just sitting there looking at a screen on the Normandy anymore. He's actually out and about amongst the humans and other peoples. So...
Yeah, totally. It's nice to... we've said this many times already this season, but the Citadel and the Normandy feel like a living, breathing place in a way that in previous games they didn't, just because they disperse your squad amongst them, not always in the same place. But after this conversation... so I'm guessing... was Jack there for you as well?
Yeah. Apparently she sent us an email.
She did send us an email. I just couldn't remember if that only happened because I was dating her or if because you just check in with her. But... the conversation you can have with Jack here, the baseline conversation is just to get an update on how the kids are doing and how working with the Alliance based on your decision is going, which is all really great information to get. But mine has an additional wrinkle, which is talking about our relationship and talking about us. And what really shocked me about this is something that we haven't talked a lot about when it comes to relationships in this game. So I ended things with Jack here.
You did?
I did. But what's really interesting is it comes at the end of the conversation. So you talk to Jack, you can talk about, how the students have been doing, how they've been helpful, how the Alliance has been utilizing them. And it's all really great, healthy stuff. And the conversation, which I'm assuming went the same way for you, MJ, is that you can support Jack more or less and just be like, I'm really proud of you. You've grown a lot. And
yeah.
Jack gets to express how much he's grown. And then Jack talks about whether, the two of you should keep going. What's next? And Shepard says, I just don't think the distance is going to work. We'll be apart for a really long time. And it's just, I don't think this will really work. And Jack just immediately jokes without any pain, seemingly like, yeah, was it really even working? And you both have a laugh. And then Jack thanks you for being a really good friend and being so kind to her and helping her. And what's interesting here is you could view it as a cheapening the relationship. Was it really a relationship? It gives the dude an easy out. But the conversation, at least the way it's played by the two voice actors, made me feel like they got something out of this, but they healthily decided they're better as friends. And they're happy to be friends. And this is something really personal to me, as I am best friends with someone I used to date. And so...
who would that be?
Who could that be?
Tell me about them. Are they nice?
No, they suck. But it was really nice to see a breakup in a video game between a man and a woman that's not boiled down to someone being jealous or someone being petty. It shows that you can be friends with people you've had relationships with, you've had sex with. Is not a thing that in mass media is depicted. Usually it's oh, well, once you've slept with somebody, that's it. You can't be friends with them anymore. It'll just be weird, which is totally not true.
It is not true.
It's the same way with the very idea of platonic friendships.
Right. Always depicted very strangely, especially between the opposite sex, whatever that means in the social norm, because gender is a construct, blah, blah, blah. It's not real. Who cares? Not the who cares, the who cares about gender.
Right.
And so this meant a lot to me. I really actually enjoyed this moment because I got to see a couple break up, be amicable, and still be friends. And I'm really glad I made that decision. I liked Jack a lot, but I have been thinking about Caden a lot as the player. And so I leaned my Shepard into that. And it ended up being amicable and really sweet. And so I wanted to get a chance to talk about that because you don't see a lot of moments like that in Mass Effect, let alone in any RPG where there's romance. And so I thought that was very cool.
That is really cool. I never knew that ending that relationship ends so peacefully because, like you, I am also very close with someone I used to date.
Uh-huh.
But with multiple people that I used to date. Just because
Right.
we dated doesn't mean that we can't still be friends. We're going to be doing a game soon, and I will have had romantic involvement with 3 people in that game.
That's true.
So that's going to be fun for me, I guess. But everyone is friends, and it's fine. And, like, I don't know. If a relationship ends, I don't think there's anything wrong with revisiting it and being like, hey, there were things about our interactions that I really enjoyed, and I would like to keep those things. And as long as everybody is healthy and no boundaries are being harmed in the process, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Same. I agree. And it was really cool to see. Before we leave Purgatory, there was one other conversation with Steve. Did you get that as well?
I did not have Steve there.
So I'll be brief on this one because we're already running long, much to Commander Nikki's excitement, I'm sure. There's a conversation with Steve at the bar where you can join him for a drink. You don't really get an option, which, as someone who doesn't drink, I don't love, but I've rolled with in this game. But also, it's an opportunity to flirt with him if you're interested in him. What I don't like is that there is a binary to this. So you have a conversation with Steve. He thanks you for getting him off the ship and helping him with his past, which I love. I love their friendship. I really do. But during that conversation, as male shepherd, you can either flirt with him or say you prefer the view, and then it scans the female dancers, just the female dancers. And I didn't want to flirt with him, not because I'm not interested in men, but because I don't want to flirt with Steve. He's not my type. I'm not interested. So but it was either flirt with him or choose that option. So I chose that option, and it's gross. It's like Shepard leans onto the bar and goes, "No thanks, I prefer the view." And then it just shows him looking at the women dancing. Looking at women dancing, there's nothing wrong with that, especially the way the way Purgatory is reminds me a little bit of a burlesque show in the way they're displayed or whatever. We can talk about how overly sexualized or not they are another time, because that'll take an hour by itself. But the way this conversation sets it up, it's like, well, I can't be into you, so I must be into the chicks. And I just hate it. It's so binary. It's gross and it sucks. And I had to share that.
Oh man, I'm very curious how that's going to go for me. I have a similar moment with Trainer on the Normandy, so we'll talk about that.
Okay.
So most of my notes are about the different debates that pop up all over the Citadel.
Yep. There's a bunch.
There's so many. There is one between 2 doctors in Huerta Memorial, and they're trying to decide how to handle their influx of patients. One is opting for triage, while the other is saying, we help everybody, end of story. And they're both making very good points. Like, you're in wartime, so you do kind of have to triage. You can't just use all of your supplies at once, because then you won't have supplies for later. But also, you did take an oath to take care of people and to make sure that everybody, like, lives. Right. Just as once everyone lives.
Yes. Thank you, Doctor.
I chose to support the human physician in favor of triage because it's a hard decision, but you have to do it.
Yeah.
And something happened that I didn't expect. The Solarian doctor was like, that's okay. The other patients, the ones with money, we're going to make them give us that money. And then we're going to buy more supplies. It'll be fine.
Yep. I chose that one as well. And I also was put off by that in the moment, just of how blunt it was, but also, eat the rich. So there's that.
Eat the rich! Unless you're prone to indigestion, then yeet the rich.
Excellent.
I still want to know where that came from.
Yeah.
He just sort of exploded onto the vocabulary spectrum. Where was this like 2 years ago? It just... I moved to Washington, and all of a sudden I'm from Pennsylvania, and it's like, what is this yeet?
The Lord yeeteth, the Lord yoinketh away.
Oh, stop. Enough. We're moving on. Yeah, there are a bunch of these decisions. There was one in the Presidium Commons with 2 CSEC officers. I don't know if you saw that one.
One is saying that they should, focus on keeping the peace because everybody's so tense. There's bar fights happening, and if CSEC isn't around being a presence, then a riot could break out. While the other one is like, who cares? We need to go hunt terrorists.
Yeah, and I supported the one trying to keep the peace. It just made sense to me. Like, we can't go on a terrorist hunt. Your heart's in the right place for still, like, wanting to get, like, I understand the jump to vengeance. I get it. We went through a traumatic experience, but, like, we need to keep the peace. That's why we're here, right? I mean, also, all CSEC are bad, but besides that,
ACAB.
Like, ACAB.
Found a way to get that acronym in there.
But I also supported that CSEC officer. I feel like there was a bunch of these though. There were at least 4 or 5, right?
Yeah, there were so many. I also said keep the peace because if you go off on a terrorist hunt, you're probably going to pick up someone who isn't a terrorist, and then everybody will make assumptions, and then you'll have a mob that you cannot control because nobody's out there keeping the peace. Great job. There was also privacy in the face of war. A CSEC officer is trying to get footage from a cafe owner's surveillance so they can try and figure out who the Cerberus sleepers are. And he's trying to just get it without a warrant. So the cafe owner doesn't want to give it to him because it violates his right to privacy. And the CSEC officer wants it because he wants to be able to find out who let Cerberus in.
Yeah. In this one, I supported the store owner.
Me too.
It just seemed and the CSEC cop does walk it back. He's like, and says what we discussed just a second ago. Like, I'm frustrated. I want to get these guys. I'm sorry. Like,
yeah. I also supported the cafe owner.
Yeah, exactly. And of course you support the cafe owner. That makes sense. I mean, and I like seeing the way that BioWare uses this crisis as a way to sort of reflect on the society's tendency to panic and overreact, or in I guess in the view of the society, react appropriately to a sudden shock. Civil liberties go by the wayside when terrorism occurs, and it's interesting to see that they use these little decisions to reflect that rather than like a big story moment.
There is one other conversation where it is 2 shop owners who are arguing over whether or not they should abandon the weapons laws.
Oh, right. Make the militia. Yeah.
Yeah. And just start selling weapons to civilians so they can protect themselves. One is in favor and the other one is against. I supported the one who is against abandoning the weapons laws because you don't want a bunch of civilians with guns who are scared and shooting at anything that makes them scared.
Yeah. I also sided with them as well. It's as they say, it's not guns that kill people, it's that sound they make. Sorry, I'm quoting Eddie Izzard because she's amazing. No, and when you side with him, he suggests trying to create an organized militia through CSEC, sort of like a civilian security to help with CSEC, which, in theory could work, but I don't have a lot of faith in CSEC.
Yeah.
But I also chose that option as well.
My last thing on the Citadel was the documentary maker who needed shots of refugees. I helped him because,
Me too.
Yeah, okay. And that was it.
Yep.
Nothing came of that, really. It was just
Nope.
like, okay.
No other important things to do on the Citadel.
Can I ask one weird question?
Yes.
Okay, so Udine is gone.
Of course.
Udine is gone now. Anderson's on Earth. Who the hell is in charge of humanity right now?
No one.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does feel like a gaping hole. If you talk to Bailey, like, he even brings it up. Like, you can have that conversation with him, and he essentially does the equivalent of a shrug because there is no answer. Like, he says the line of succession is really short and getting shorter because of what's happening.
And it just feels weird that after this, we just never really interact with whoever's leading our species day to day, infrastructure, people management stuff. I guess it's you now.
Yeah, basically, I was
so.
just about to say. It's Shepard now, unfortunately. Unfortunately for everyone. And then as we leave the Normandy, we see a familiar face.
We do. We see the Vermeer survivor, and you get to have a conversation with them about what happened. We hinted at this conversation with Ken last week. By hinted, I mean we had it from the Caden side because we almost deprived Kenneth of that, and I'm sorry that we almost did. You know, essentially you get to tell the Vermeer survivor whether you would have shot them or not, which of course I assume MJ, like me, said you wouldn't have. And you knew...
I didn't have that
option?
I didn't have... No.
Really?
Ashley did not care to know.
Huh. Interesting. All right. Well, since Ken went into detail about with what happens with Caden, I'll just say I took all the Paragon choices, and yes, of course, I invited him back to the ship. MJ, before we move on, why don't you talk a little bit about how the Ashley side goes, since we haven't talked about that?
It was a short conversation. She was really concerned about fighting something that she can't see. Most of her stress was coming from, like, was Udina indoctrinated? And how is it possible for us to fight something that I can't gauge with my own eyes? Like, I thought Udina was fine. He asked me to be a Spectre, and I thought it was my chance to do something. And, like, I just can't sit around healing. Like, I need to be active. So I understood why she thought that she was doing the right thing. Like, that's the point of everything Udina was doing, is he wanted us all to believe.
Right.
And, you know, most of her emotions come from that inability to be sure.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's a short interaction, but her voice is very fraught with emotion.
Mm-hmm.
She was offered a job with Hackett, but she wanted to be with Shepard. So I welcomed her back onto the ship.
It's really interesting hearing you tell me that hers was so short, because Caden's felt like a more full conversation, and it only exacerbates Ken's frustrations from last week, that even though the majority of people see Ashley, it feels like in the third game Caden was more thought out, or not more thought out, but they're trying to redeem Caden in the third game for what they failed to do in the first game. But even less people are seeing him in the third game than even the first game, because you can't see both of them, and I get that, and it totally tracks. But yeah, so then we get back on the ship, and then we have a party in our quarters for the next 20 minutes.
First Anderson is so fucking bad.
Oh yeah, so yeah, that's right. We get back onto the ship, and you have a conversation with Anderson and Hackett, and Anderson is just pissed about Kai Lang, about what happened, about with Udina, and like is unsurprised that Udina betrayed everyone, but is so mad about it. Also, can I pause it for a moment? Imagine if they didn't retcon that. Imagine if you had to face off against Anderson, or they made Anderson betray you. I could never.
Anderson would never.
I know. That's what I'm saying. So that's why they retconned it, because once they wanted to write that plot line, they weren't going to make Anderson do that.
Yep.
Not Space Dad.
Yeah.
Not Space Dad.
I do wish they'd been a bit more clear on Udina's motivations. I understand, he wanted to go for the whole coup thing, but it seemed like he was mellowing out at the beginning of the game, then all of a sudden there's just this he was working with Cerberus the whole time thing, which you wish that there had been any indication of that, beyond him just being a dick.
Right.
But I think that mellowing out lulls you into a false sense of security. It makes you feel like, finally, Udina and I can have a civil conversation where nobody has to get punched in the face. And my dad does not have to come in here and intervene.
Yeah.
It actually makes more sense if you don't put him on the council. Like if you don't, because if he just gets elevated to the job when Anderson stays on Earth, because then you go, oh, this is some sort of like belated vengeance going on. Like, I was deprived of what was rightfully mine.
When we get back on the ship, I, as always, go directly to the cockpit and talk to Joker, because I always want to know what he has to say.
A really good quote was, "I worked for Cerberus when they were vigilantes helping the helpless. Now they're a little too mainstream. And evil."
Joker's got to draw the line somewhere. Though I like when he's starting to give Cerberus shit. You can call him out for that and be like, you used to work for those assholes. Like,
Something about leather seats.
Yeah.
What did Joker say about Caden?
Oh, he said that he's glad that Caden's back, and that everything that went down with Odina is not going to look good on the resume, or something along those lines. Like, it's not going to blow over well.
He said something similar about Ashley, but also said that Ash aced the "don't shoot your commander" portion of the Normandy reinstatement test.
That's funny. I like that.
I do like that you call Joker out on that, just because it does kind of address the whole where is the big red line issue for a lot of people. And we can have that discussion about him, Joker, but Jacob, Miranda, the whole kit and caboodle. Like, where is the thing for? Because we don't really see at the end of Mass Effect 2 what causes Miranda or Jacob to really kind of go, oh hey, Cerberus bad. Why didn't I see this before? And Joker going, oh, they're a little too mainstream and evil. Like, well, they were evil before, dude.
They were just better at hiding it then. Okay. Conversation with Edie. She talks about how she's having a full-on existential crisis because a Reaper was destroyed by her Thresher Maw, and if a highly advanced piece of technology can be killed by a worm, then what are her chances?
I do appreciate that during this conversation, Joker keeps interjecting. They stare at him and then go back to the conversation like he's the peanut gallery. Like, yes. Problem solved. All we need is a giant cannon that fires Thresher Maws. And they both just look at him and say nothing. They just go back to the conversation.
We are having a serious conversation here.
I do want to see the gun that fires Thresher Maws.
I do too. And Edie also questions, like, what makes life worth living? Because she's a synthetic life form. She can't follow the organic imperative of reproduction. And I'm very happy that Shepard's like, that's not all there is to people's lives.
I did that too. It's like, no, it's not just about the whole baby thing. There's more to lives than that.
Like, some people love having families and love being parents, and that's their life, and that's great, but that's not for everybody.
Yeah.
I like these conversations with Edie turn into, like, sentient human life for dummies. You know, it's like the Cliff's Notes version. It's like in the course of 3 conversations, I could turn you into a better, more moral human being.
Yeah. And you do, because Edie goes, I'm going to reprogram myself to follow the imperatives that you put forward. Goodness, kindness, compassion, being a better person. I'm just going to reprogram myself. Thanks. Okay, and that was it for Edie. Traynor has a lead on the scientist from Arrae. That's where we're going to go. And we find out that Traynor was on Horizon when we were fighting the Collectors.
Yep.
I forgot about that.
Me too, dang. Yeah. That she survived because of what we did on Horizon.
I find Garrus at the memorial wall. He asks me, could I have pulled the trigger? And I was not sure.
I said no, I couldn't have.
I really wish there was an I don't know, because I genuinely don't know if I would have done it. Because in the name of duty and protecting the rest of the council and the people on the Citadel, I'd like to think that I would if I had to. But she's also my friend, so I'm not sure. I said no because I wasn't sure, but...
Yeah, I said no because I could never shoot my sweet dear Marshmallow.
I know, you can't shoot your husband.
That's not fine. My husband yet.
Give it time.
Soon. Let's see. Chakwas wants us to see about exchanging our supplies for military grade supplies.
Yep.
Javik is salty about traders.
Yep.
Steve wants to hit the club.
Yep. Okay,
so my first interaction in the cabin was chess with Traynor.
Same.
Okay, good, because that's the one I want to talk about the most. Traynor comes up to your cabin to play chess, and then she's like, oh my god, you have a shower. The taps in the women's bathroom suck. And then my options are to, like, flirt with her, either like nicely or meanly.
Mean flirting?
Like, I can only flirt with her. She says something about chess, and your options are to say, how about a shower instead, or is that all? And I'm like, I don't like either of these.
It's the Thane conversation.
I'm in a relationship.
Yeah, it's that you're like, oh, hey, we're friends. I want to jump your bones.
So I went with, how about a shower? Because, you know, she seems like she wanted to have a proper shower. And I don't mind sharing my bathroom with my friends. That's fine.
Yeah.
But she showers with the door open.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says something about wanting to look nice for someone special. And you have the option to join her. And I'm just like, no. No. I invited... I wish that they didn't have this gratuitous shower scene. If you wanted to have this shower scene after I decided that I wanted to pursue a relationship with Trainer, fine. But you're having the shower scene before I even make that decision. So, I don't know. I've already told Garrus that I'm still interested in him. So why would I then turn around and be like, oh, but hey, like, we haven't had a conversation about anything else. So that feels like a betrayal of my relationship.
Yep.
How did this work out for you? Was there a gratuitous shower scene for you as well?
She doesn't say anything about the shower with Male Shep. She just wallops you in chess. That whole thing happens, but there's no like shower related anything. Do you still play chess with her?
Yes, you do still play chess. She still kicks your ass. She then tells you a joke that says, what's the difference between Commander Shepard and a Krogan? Which, wow, rude.
Right.
Rude. Right to my face?
I like how when you're playing chess, as a chess player, I like that Shepard just goes, if we were on the battlefield, that maneuver would have worked. I love that line. It's so good.
It's good. Then it's the Diana interview. I don't have anything much to say about that except, well, at the end, she says, keep feeding me like this and I'll follow you home. And this is your opportunity to be like, yeah, let's bang. Or, no, thank you.
And I got the same thing at the end, and I went, no, thank you.
I had to double check and make sure that Diana is canonically bisexual.
Is she?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. As I've said on the show before, when a character in a game has the face of your friend's wife, I will never sleep with them in game. Ever, it's too weird.
Yeah, that's a good rule.
I have watched their child grow up. It just feels so weird.
It does, yeah. And then the final thing you get to do in your cabin is James comes up. He wants to talk to you about being the N7 program reached out to him to join, and you can support him. I think you can only support him, but you are either aggressive or emotionally supportive. And of course I was emotionally supportive. He has his concerns because the last time he led, bad things happened, and you remind him that it's how you handle those bad situations that determines whether you're ready for command, not if the situations always go well. It's a great conversation.
I said that I didn't hesitate to join. It was a no-brainer decision. Because if you're being offered the best of the best, you take it.
Yeah.
Like, they're telling you that you're worth this. Take it.
Yeah.
I also took the path that told him that what's right isn't always easy, and being an N7 is about sacrifice. And that's why you were tracked down and given this commendation.
Yep.
And then that's it.
That's it for check-ins. It's nice that the N7 program comes up like this, just because it's easy to think N7 is just a letter and a number. It doesn't really mean anything because it doesn't always come up in conversation like this. So I love that there's this moment where you can talk about the program and talk about what it's like for someone on the outside looking in wanting to be a part of it.
And then we're over to Arrae.
Yep.
I have so few notes about this.
So few.
Yeah, the mission itself,
It's short.
it's a short mission. I mean, I have feelings about Jacob and I have feelings about the characters here, but my biggest problem with this kind of mission is the layout is another, here is a multiplayer map, let's show you the layout while also doing a more story-driven mission. But at least this multiplayer map layout, like, there's stuff to do here. There's people to talk to. There, it runs a little longer. But
There's a Turian toxin to pick up.
There's a Turian toxin to pick up, which if you miss, you just have to go to the CSEC office, which I've done a bunch this playthrough because I don't remember where anything is. I do appreciate that option, though, that they let you spend credits to get stuff that you've missed. Because in previous games, if you miss something, that's it, baby. It's gone.
That's fine.
Yeah, so let's talk about Jacob. So in the summary, MJ gave the gist of this mission. And, like, I really want to like Jacob as a character. And I feel like we talked about this in the last game. And we talked about it at length with Chuck Collins when we tackled that ridiculous mission that is just bad.
And we completely rewrote it.
That we completely rewrote together as a group. Like, the problem is he's not a badly performed character. His voice actor's great. His, the way he acts with Shepard is interesting. And there's a camaraderie there that I want to be more real than it is. But the point of this mission is to rescue these scientists to work on the Crucible, which is good. And I'm glad that there's a story showing more people defecting from Cerberus besides Shepard. Like, that part of this mission I appreciate. That it's not just Shepard and general civilization that thinks the elusive man is crazy. It's a lot of people think that he is and way off base. We experienced it with Miranda, and now we're experiencing it with a ton of scientists. However, the first thing I want to talk about is how when we're entering the building, the first person we run into is Dr. Archer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wrote, oh, look, this asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how I appreciate that no matter how nice you are as Shepard, Shepard does not want anything to do with him.
I was very tempted to be mean to him.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to lie about David's health because
Same.
that felt like ill-wishing on David. And it's, as John said afterwards while we were talking about it, unnecessarily cruel to let him think that David is dead.
Yeah. I did the same thing. I appreciate also that as you're having this conversation with Archer and you're getting more information from him, Shepard is never happy to be talking to him. Mark Mirror at least plays it as stern, short, very brief, and then when you end the conversation, he goes, I'm not going to lie and pretend I was glad to see you. Like, I appreciate that because he did some effed up stuff. And Dr. Archer does say, based on the choices that MJ and I made, that he does regret his decision and he does continually feel bad and is glad that David's okay. And that's nice to hear. I consider it as Shepard too little too late, but it's at least nice to hear.
I like that he said, thank you for saving David both times.
From me.
It's like, well, the first time was from him. The second time was at Grissom Academy.
Yeah, but I mean,
there's like, I recognize I was the problem. Thank you for rescuing him from me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it just the sheer depth and the horror of the things he inflicted upon his own brother. It feels like this isn't quite enough. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Darn, I signed him up for a drug trial that didn't go well. No, you stuck like tubes down his throat and shit. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, this is why we make sure that David is safe and will never be approached by Gavin Archer ever again. Cool. Gavin will never get his hands on his brother.
Nope.
Like, that's done.
Yep.
You may know that he is alive and you may not know anything else.
And then after that moment, we're able to go inside and speak to the head scientist, whose name is escaping me.
Bryn Cole. Sorry. I was distracted by one of the notes that I wrote. I was like, why did I write that I'm obsessed with indoctrination? Nope. Elusive Man is obsessed with indoctrination. I initialed it.
Yes. There you go. So you talk to Bryn and you find out what they've been doing there and that they are trying to actively avoid and combat Cerberus. While you're walking up, then I appreciate this exchange between Jacob and Shepard, and I think that if we got to see more of their relationship in the second game besides romantic relationship like friendship, it would play better. But he continues to limp around, he continues to try and be useful, and you're like, Jacob, you were shot, stop it.
Please go sit down.
In my playthrough, he was shot again. I kind of had some weird David Arquette from Scream vibes with Jacob in this one, because he got shot on the collector base for me in the same spot.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
So,
oh no.
So when you're holding the door after that whole biotic walkthrough section of the long walk, Jacob is the one at the door who gets a bullet in the same location the collector shot him, and then Cerberus shoots him again in the same place here. And it's like, dude, you got like a magnetic kidney or something. You got to get that looked at.
He's not lucky.
Yeah, right? Yeah, he's just not.
I felt like Jacob was really underutilized in this mission because when we first land, he's already basically taken out. We get a little bit about what the scientists are up to from his perspective. We find out that he's together with Bryn, which is nice for him. Not nice if you romanced him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as someone who did not romance him and was just his friend, like, oh, that's cool. I'm happy for you. Find it a little weird that, like, this is what resulted, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
You do you. You live your life.
so we're going to have to start talking about this conversation, the way that it deviates for the two shepherds. Because, I mean, first of all, we've discovered that Jacob has a type, I think, at this point. Because we got the rule of threes going. You know, once is an anomaly, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is the pattern. And we've gone with Miranda, you, Dr. Cole. So we've figured out that Jacob really seems to have a thing for Cerberus-affiliated people who are way out of his league.
Dang.
No, by his own admission, he even goes, Miranda deserves a better person than I. And so, if you do romance him, the whole thing turns into, okay, at some point, he then dumps you, shacks up with Dr. Cole, and they're having a kid, and this is the first time you've heard from him since the end of Game 2. And that's just... ugh.
That's really bad. And a huge stereotype
Yep.
of men of color.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
And this whole mission, like the things you were talking about, this being a glorified multiplayer map, the fact that he's taken out of commission so early, it all kind of reflects on a sort of general pattern of marginalizing Jacob to some degree or another. I mean, this mission, as you said, is a complete nothing burger of a job. I mean, just comparing it to the other, I'm calling them reunion missions for the Mass Effect 2 characters. I mean, for people like Morden, Thane, we'll have a couple more later on, you know, they are directly integrated into the plot. For characters like Grunt, or later on Samara, you have these, they introduce new enemy types who are more challenging. You know, Grunt also had this sort of unique, and Jack's mission as well, had these gameplay sequences that you don't see elsewhere in the game, where you have like the flamethrower, or you get to pilot the mech suit and go full Titanfall on some Cerberus people. But this mission doesn't do any of that. It's incredibly linear. You know, there are no real unique sequences apart from a turret segment towards the end.
Yay, turrets.
Which you didn't even have to do.
Nope.
Right. Yeah, and that segment's like, over in a blink, you have 2 other turret segments that occur elsewhere in the game, so it's not even unique to this level. It just feels like they put the absolute bare minimum effort required to have Jacob have a level. You know, and there's nothing unique about him that's sort of integrated into the themes or the things that you're doing. You know, you could... I mean, his backstory gives you rich, interesting information. This man used to be a corsair. He was part spy, part pirate. How do you make a spirate boring? You know... But... And you could do something with that here. You know, you could be asking which one of them fed their location to the elusive man, and start interviewing the other survivors, the scientists, to see if any one of them is indoctrinated. Do something with this level that makes it different, makes it interesting, makes it unique. Give Jacob literally anything to do but sit there bleeding, you know, and...
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have the, oh, by the way, I'm cheating on you and I'm having a baby with another woman. Which, I'm not surprised there aren't people mad about that as much, because with things like the ending of the game, you know, almost everyone who plays is going to experience that, but very few people, as a percentage of the overall audience, probably went through the entire Jacob romance quest line. So they may not have seen this as much. But damn! I mean...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that Jake...
Hey, it's brutal.
It's not just brutal, but it's uniquely brutal. Because Jacob's the only character for whom there can be no positive romance ending. You know, for players, he's either dead, or he commits or he cheats on you. And that's the only way this romance ends.
Yeah.
There's nothing good that can come of it. You cannot have a positive romance with, again, the only romanceable black character in the game. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a huge problem.
And we're going to get to this later. It gets worse later.
Yes, it does.
So, yeah, I guess we need to move on, but still, it's this whole scene just is, yeah.
Well, like, even when you talk to him in the medical facility, like, anything that's important to Jacob before this mission is a one-line throwaway. Like, you ask him about his dad, is like, do you still think about it? And he's like, yeah, it haunts me every night. And that's it. Like, and that's, I mean, it's important, but why isn't there a more conversation with that?
Yeah, why can't we ask about the people that we rescued from the Gernsback?
Yeah. Why is it just his dad and that it haunts him? Like, where's the rest of that conversation?
Yeah. There's a part of me that's like, maybe there's some, like, some more subtle ramifications. Like, I mean, you could headcanon that in a way that makes it, like, that turns Jacob, like, dangerously insane. But, you know, because this whole, I need to be a better man, better father than my dad was to me, and then all of a sudden he, as soon as you become unavailable, dumps your ass and has a kid with someone else. It's like, dude, this is the wrong time for a picket fence in a 2-car garage. We have sentient spaceships trying to declare war on humanity, you know? But there really isn't nearly enough fallout from that job, just period.
Yeah.
We do get a little bit more sanctuary talk. We've heard a little bit of it on the Citadel. We hear a little bit more of it here. We still don't know in game what the sanctuary is or really how it's relevant. We know as people who have played it, but yeah, the combat wasn't complicated. I found it satisfying because it was just quick and clean and wasn't frustrating, but was just challenging enough.
Yeah, we're at the point now where we're in the stride of our specs, because if you have uploaded a character, you get extra points, and so you're mostly almost maxed out by this point. And so at this point, combat is flowing the way each class is designed to flow, and so it should be less of a struggle. That said, if you're having trouble with it still, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but at least for me as a player, at this point, I am flowing as a Vanguard the way I expect to. I charge in, I do an AoE, I take people out with a shotgun. It's pretty straightforward. And, like, the narrative doesn't tie into the combat of this much either. Like you were saying before, Mike, like, they short Jacob in a lot of ways. The fact that he's not fighting with you, I think, is a bummer. What I like about the Dragon Age series, as I've replayed through it recently, is that there are a lot of moments in Inquisition where additional characters not in your party will still fight with you, like stuff you do with Hawk when Hawk shows up and some other things. And there was really no reason to not have Jacob get shot and to have Jacob fight alongside you here. Like, even if he's staying by the base protecting people as, like, glorified scenery, it would be part of the moment.
Right.
But that doesn't happen here.
Listeners, do you remember when Matt absolutely hated the concept of doing Dragon Age?
Yeah,
do you remember?
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, and what the bringing up Dragon Age actually kind of has a moment for me. It's like there is a broader philosophical difference about starting, you know, like your original team members, that Dragon Age and Mass Effect differ sharply. In Mass Effect, your starting characters, your Ashleys, Caden, Jacob and Miranda, and then James, are routinely like these really kind of half-drawn, sort of really, you know, minor characters compared to the Garruses, the Rexes, Tally, you know, and those characters make these huge impacts and ascend to the highest rungs of their societies. And in Dragon Age, it's almost flipped, because you get, you know, Alistair, Morrigan, Cassandra, Aveline, you know, you watch them rapidly ascending, and Solus, let's not even get talking about Solus, you know, but, you know, all of these characters you start the game with make these huge consequential decisions over the course of the game independently of you, but sometimes influenced by you. But in Mass Effect, it's the exact opposite. It seems like those characters fall by the wayside quickly. And apart from a few lingering glances at Miranda's ass, we don't really focus on them very much.
No.
And so you start seeing that in levels like this, where there just really isn't a whole lot that you could emphasize Jacob and his role as a Cerberus operative and all that, and they just don't. and it's weird, and
Right.
it's sad because there's a potential there. He has the potential
Yeah.
to be an interesting character and to be used more effectively, and they just don't seem all that interested in him.
Yeah, and I think what's even wilder, and MJ, tell me what you think about this. Like, there was potential for Jacob to be a spy master, essentially. Like, I'm fresh off of Inquisition and like Liliana and how her character's evolved. But like, considering what you mentioned earlier about him being a corsair and essentially being a spy pirate, a spyrate, if you will, there was so much opportunity because they're hiding from Cerberus to make Jacob show his skill as a spy and a soldier, and like making him a Liliana kind of like spy master, like trying to find things out from Cerberus, from this base, while helping these scientists, like being a pinnacle for this base. And they don't do that at all. They leave that all on the table.
He could have become a shadow broker agent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even in game 2, they don't really use him much on the ship. You're not really sure what exactly his role is on that ship, but using him in that kind of capacity, you have a number of Alliance personnel on that Cerberus vessel, and as a former Alliance person, he could have been looking for moles on the Normandy, figuring out who's ferreting information to the Alliance about Cerberus. That would have been an interesting use of his character, watching
Totally.
him and Miranda take divergent paths relative to Cerberus. One becomes more diehard, one becomes less. That could have been an interesting dynamic, even asking why he leaves at the end of game 2 and starts helping people at the beginning of game 3. It would be nice to know what his big red line was. Why is it suddenly...
And it really turns out to just be Bryn.
Yeah,
Right?
You're absolutely right, MJ.
Because he's like chilling on a beach in the Mediterranean or something. Just sort of hanging out. Oh yeah.
Just went to the beach.
Yeah. And it's like, wait, priorities, dude.
Played some volleyball.
Like, you were there for this whole thing. You saw the collectors. You saw the Reaper thing, and you're just on a vacation. I'm on house arrest for the war crimes I committed. But anyway, and it took someone coming up to him personally and asking for help for him to go, oh right, Cerberus, those guys, yeah, they're bad. Totally bad. I knew that the whole time. Bad.
Yeah. But the one thing that I did like was how this mission showcased Jacob's loyalty to people that he cares about.
True.
So he has found a community with these scientists. He has found a family here. And unlike his father, he wants to make sure that he takes care of these people who rely on him.
And it does provide opportunity during the mission for him to, show that strength and want to help these people. And even in the final moments of the mission, when you're trying to escape and you're overwhelmed by Cerberus agents as you're running to the shuttle, I do appreciate, though, that the person who comes to save your ass right at the last second
Yep.
is Bryn and not Jacob.
Yeah.
That's just a fun, awesome, badass moment. But also, as a New Yorker, I just have to say, and I'm curious if you felt this way, MJ, because I know you also formerly of New York, when they did the top-down view of all the Cerberus flooding out of the base, did you get, like, Rats in the New York subway vibe? Because
I got
totally
Penn
did.
Station.
Oh, yeah.
I got Penn Station, and it horrified me. I had, like, war flashbacks to Penn Station.
But yeah, all in all, there's not a lot to, besides everything we've discussed about Jacob, the mission itself, there's not a lot much more to say. It's pretty straightforward. I didn't hate it as much as some other missions, but it was kind of nothing. I think I'm more annoyed by it because of a lot of the things that Mike, MJ, and myself have already talked about. How they poorly utilized this character who isn't uninteresting. If you talk to him in the second game, there's a lot of interesting things to find out, but does often get sidelined both in 2 and in this game, to sidelined as a stereotype and as a boring human character. And it's a bummer because they could have done so much more.
They should have done so much more.
There is a certain nobility to the normalcy he's pursuing, which I think is underrated. Being the one person who's just got this very, non 300,000 foot view. Just the people in front of him matter to him and are those are the people he's trying to care about and protect and help. And while everyone else has these, giant epic stories going on, more carrying the genophage, but all these other things that are going on, he's just dealing with the 5 people directly in front of his face. And compared to everyone else, that there is a certain element of that just go, okay, I can appreciate that he's not quite as, grandiose of a character. He's the one normal guy on your ship. And you'll and that's not something you should just dismiss out of hand. I mean, there is a flip side to boring, and that's calm. And that's the thing, is that all the time they describe him in Game 2 as this stabilizing presence, this calm guy. They use the word stable frequently, which is weird. but everyone else is chaos and destruction, and he's just mellow guy. And that's not bad. A guy who works hard, does his job, is a good utility player, who's useful in a pinch, but not exceptional, is you shouldn't look down on a character like that. There is a good part to that. Yeah.
I think we should segue into the additional Jacob conversation that you wanted to have, unless you feel like we've talked enough about him.
I think most of that has been covered. The only thing that there is a follow-up to that cheating plot line that somehow makes it worse. So later on, if you follow that romance quest line and you do break up with him and all that, you can meet him later after this mission on the Citadel. You guys will not see this as a result of not romancing him. But you can talk to him on the Citadel again. And depending on how the renegade prompts go, he's under the impression that you broke up amicably. At which point you can pull a renegade trigger and slap him, which makes it even worse. And then there's this absolute glorious turd blossom of a phrase where he says he thinks he might have more in common with his dad than he thought. And now for the callback that no one wanted. It's what? Did we need to go there? Why? Yes. Why? Today's episode is brought to you by the letter Y.
Yeah.
Why? It's and the reason that one bugs me so much is because they had time. In between Game 2 and Game 3, they had time to go, we didn't treat him well as a character. Between 3 and whenever they put out the DLC, which is where some of this will take place, they had time to go, we didn't treat him well as a character, let's fix that. And they doubled down instead.
Yeah.
And it's what?
Someone on that staff just had it in for Jacob.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is that because this whole conversation about Jacob being stable, quote unquote, comes up multiple times. Even in the Shadow Brokers files, he's described as a stabilizing presence. And then he cheats on you. It's and then you get into this, I guess me and my dad have some sort of potentially inherited character flaw that makes us bad with women. BioWare? Seriously? Oh my god.
That's bad.
Yeah.
And they had chances to reflect, to say we should have done better. And they just kept piling on. And they really did. 2, he wasn't that bad. He was the only romance characters, I think, who can actually say, I love you during your romance in Game 2. I think he's one of the only ones that says that phrase. And then he dumps you in Game 3. And it's I think something changed between Games 2 and 3. Whoever was in charge of writing and doing his level and dialogue and character progression. Because they really seemed to just take a character who was solid but had a really problematic mission and just knock him on the ground, kick him a few times, and then run him over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be the guy who was delivering like the disheartening bad news, but yeah, and
It's problematic, and we should talk about
right,
it.
and that's the thing. We're as fans, we have a responsibility to say the people we like, this game, these trilogy that we love so much, who has such great characters and such great writing in so many instances. Why they dropped the ball for this character and this specific character. Because you can't ignore that aspect. You can't ignore that he's the one black guy you can romance. I mean, between him and Anderson, there's only 2 black people in almost the entire trilogy.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, this pattern starts to emerge, and you just go, okay, at some point, how many times do you have to disservice a character before it becomes blatantly obvious that you do not care about him at all? I mean, the fact that of the 2 of them, he's the head of security for Pinnacle Station at the beginning when you first meet him. And the doctor who wakes you up, the guy who's trying to kill you with all the droids, doesn't give a damn about Jacob. Thinks Miranda is a threat who needs to be killed immediately. But the head of security for the station, he's just a guy. When at the beginning of Game 3, both Miranda and Jacob have left Cerberus. Miranda is a threat who needs to be hunted across the galaxy and killed immediately. Jacob is just a guy who can chill in the Mediterranean on a beach. And Elusive Man doesn't give a damn about Jacob. And it's just... The pattern keeps re-emerging. No one cares that Jacob is there. Yeah. What information he has, what he knows, who he can help and potentially be a spy master for. He's just allowed to continue to go on unassailed by people who have every reason to want him dead. So, I wish his character could have been handled better. And there are aspects to him that could have been interesting. The Spirate thing, could have been interesting. He had potential to be used differently in Game 2 and Game 3. And for most players... Because, as we've discussed before, most players play as male Shep, and most female players probably don't romance him. Or female shepherds probably don't romance him. Because, again, kind of boring. So, it's only a small percentage of players who go through that quest line, and who see that. So, the outrage isn't there. It's not like there's going to be a hashtag Jacob deserved better on Twitter, But it doesn't mean that the fans who listen to this or who talk about it online can't at least say, hey, BioWare, you got a chance with both Legendary Edition coming up and with the new game that's on the horizon at some point to make sure you do better and properly attend to the characters of color, especially. The aliens aren't the only ones allowed to be interesting. The humans deserve good treatment, and they deserve to be handled with the same level of care and attention. So, and it's our job to hold them to that, because they don't answer to anyone but the people who are going to buy the game. So, it's not just graphics or cutscenes or, weird facial animations that we need to get worried about, or, potentially controversial endings. There also is the in-game content, the way these characters are respected or not respected. And that's all I'm really asking for as far as moving forward, being better fans, being better consumers of media. These games help me to kind of find new right things to do, and I'd like to reciprocate, and help them be the best version of this story that they can be. Yeah. So endeth the spiel.
I agree completely. That was well said.
I have 2 thoughts that I would like to follow up. One is, while you and I were talking about the follow-up of Jacob's romantic arc, to establish if it was going to be spoilery for Matt and how to talk about it without spoiling Matt. You told me that one of the things that Jacob says to you is if you left the Vermeer survivor for someone in 2, he reminds you of that. And I just want to say, being dead for 2 years is not the same as us being separated for 6 months. Not the same.
Yeah, and I think the whole thing basically comes about as him saying, "Oh well, me cheating doesn't mean blah blah blah." Well, you cheated too, so me cheating doesn't count. Or
That's not how that works.
it doesn't.
It's like it doesn't work that way.
It's like so, and that's just
Also, I died. My relationship was over.
yeah, and I just don't understand why they decided. Oh well, this character really doesn't have a whole lot to do. Let's turn him into a Maury Povich episode. Why?
The other thing is, without spoiling anything for Matt about Andromeda, is I felt like Andromeda took a good step forward with their representation of characters of color, because we do have a squad mate who I think that he's great, and he does have his flaws, but I don't think those flaws are tied to him being a person of color. Like, I don't think they're stereotype flaws. I think his flaws are just because of who he is.
I know exactly what you're referring to, and I agree. I was not going to bring that up.
Yeah. Well, I would like to put it out there that we do make progress in Andromeda. And if BioWare takes that progress and really runs with it, I think there's potential to see some really good things in a new game.
One can only hope. Yeah.
Okay, I can't speak to that.
Yeah. Yes, it's I
Optimism.
I agree. I do agree with your assessment, and they are improving. They are improving, and I'm curious from what I've seen of the new Dragon Age game whether that also follows a similar trend line. The trailer they released suggests they might at least have a more prominent role for a person of color as well, but I don't know that for certain. So it would be nice to see them making progress and being more responsible on that front.
For sure. Totally. Are we wrapped on Jacob? I mean, I feel like Mike could talk for another 2 hours, but we don't have the time. We'll have to do a side podcast about why Jacob was done wrong.
But I think we're done.
So why don't you, MJ, take us into Fandom Corner for this episode?
Fandom Corner. Fandom Corner. One day
Stop
I will have a theme song for Fandom Corner.
No, you won't.
Ba-doop-ba-doop.
Anyway.
I have two separate links, but they are essentially the same item. For the RPG tabletop role-playing game fans, we have dice with the Mako on them. I can't stop laughing. I love them so much. They're D6s, and they have the Mako on them, I think in place of the 1. No, in place of the 6.
In place of the 6, and the Mako is not on its wheels, it's on its back.
It's flipped, and I love it. It just makes me so happy.
That's very good.
Oh, they're so cute and wonderful. They're by Nexus Outpost. You can get a single D6 for $4 or a set of 6 for $20. I think they're great. You can always use a D6, especially if you play a lot of D&D. Mm-hmm. And the other set of dice is a full set. D4, D10, D100, D20, all the things inspired by Thane Krios. It's this really nice kind of fluorescent green with bronze numbering, and that is through Geek Style Dice. They have other dice themed from Borderlands, and they also have another Mass Effect dice, but it's Andromeda, so I didn't bring that one.
These are great too. They're called the Siha. Mm-hmm. Thane Krios Mass Effect inspired dice, which is great. Yeah, I love this kind of stuff, that they are Thane Krios themed dice because this seller decided they are, and the color scheme fits it.
Yeah.
But like, they don't have Thane's face on them or anything.
No.
Which would probably be worse. No, yeah, they look awesome. Definitely go check them out, especially if you are a tabletop player dabbling in Mass Effect tabletop.
Yeah. Which we'll have something about at some point in the near future.
Yes. Probably towards
Shifty
the end of the season, like last season. But we'll see. Well, that's our episode. First of all, I'm very excited. I want to say that our next guest is someone I met through the streaming world and the YouTube space. Dr. Erin McDonald is joining us as we head back to the Citadel to wrap up a couple of other major missions on the Citadel. And we connected through Cipher of Tears community, and so we're really excited to have her on. And, of course, I want to thank our guest, Mike Kimble. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This has been a refreshing and interesting conversation and experience.
Well, I'm glad you had fun at least. That's the key.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell folks where they can find you on the internet?
Not very many places. I am available on both Twitter and Discord under the username of Kerfliggle, Kerfliggle. Don't ask. It doesn't mean anything. It's basically synonymous with Hoobastank. It's just nonsense. But I'm, as we've discussed, very active on the Discord and occasionally on Twitter, although try not to get too bogged down in all my political shit.
That's
so
fair.
That's pretty much it. I'm unfortunately not as active in fandom stuff as I could have been, but hopefully that'll ramp up in weeks and years to come.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for being here. It was a pleasure to have you. And who knows, maybe we'll see you again in the Andromeda season if you're up for it.
Oh, you know it.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
If you like what you heard here, follow us on social media. We're at ReignitePod on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram, facebook.com/reignitepod, or you can send us an email at reignitepod@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcatcher. It helps us get seen so other people can find us.
We're also members of the Certain POV podcast network. You can find us at certainpov.com, where we have a ton of other podcasts, each with a unique point of view. You can also find a permanent invite link to our Discord server and chat with our guest today, as well as many others, and join in the conversation about Mass Effect.
I just waved to a podcast audience.
They wouldn't have known if you didn't say anything.
Matt could have caught the essence of your wave in the recording. I'm sure it's fine.
It's true. It's fine.
As for personal projects, my seasonal Christmas podcast is coming to a close. We have 2 episodes left, but you can always go back and listen. You can find that at certainpov.com. We are called Certain Point of View, so go check that out. Also, I technically have a P.O. box now because my husband got one because he's a history wizard on TikTok, and 50% of everything he owns is mine. So if you want to send me holiday cards, birthday cards, stickers, fan art, fan fiction, anything that you want, you can send that to P.O. Box 4288 in Dunellen, New Jersey, 08812. And if you want to send me something for Matt, I will make sure that it gets into his hands.
Thank you. Yes, please send us your fan mail of any kind, digital or physical. Although don't send the digital fan mail to the P.O. Box. It won't work.
That would be weird if you printed out an email and then mailed it to me. I don't like when people do that. Don't do that.
Wait, that's happened?
I've had a coworker print out an email and walk it over to my desk.
I'm going to move on from that instead of voicing my opinion on it. I have a ton of stuff that I'm working on as well. Instead of spieling it all, you can just go to www.djstormageddon.com. You can find my Twitch stream, all of my podcasts, my merch, my Patreon, literally everything I do, again, at www.djstormageddon.com.
We'd like to thank Red Spanx for our It's Okay to Be a Marshmallow t-shirt on Redbubble, featuring our favorite marshmallow, Kaden Nolenko. You can find more of his work at Chaos Does Art on Instagram. We'd also like to thank Case Aiken for developing more amazing shirt designs that you can find through certainpov.com or on Teespring. Thank you to David Boyle for designing our logo, which you can also get on a shirt through Redbubble. And finally, thank you to Dan Bull for letting us use the Mass Effect rap for our theme music. I'm MJ.
I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And I'm Mike Kimble. We should go.
You're listening to Reignite. I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite podcast on the Citadel.
Can you believe we've been friends for 7 years?
And it all started because I compared you to Alana the Lioness.
Tamara Pierce really set the tone of our friendship.
A love of magic,
Briar Moss,
fantasy, powerful women, and of course,
Briar Moss. I'm Anna.
And I'm MJ.
And we invite you to join our Circle of Friendship,
where we do a chapter-by-chapter deep dive into the Circle of Magic series by Tamara Pierce.
We answer important questions like, how does Moonstream let certain dedicates take care of children?
Can you imagine anyone else but Mandy Patinkin playing Nico?
Knives, Briar?
And
knives?
Join us every other Monday at cofpodcast.libsyn.com or wherever you download podcasts.
But seriously, knives?
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.